Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Today's webinar is going to be looking at large projects. I'm Martin from support, and I will be joined today by...
Hi, I'm Karen. I'll be working in the background, helping out with the Q&A sessions that we will have peppered throughout the webinar. So we ask everyone to please use the Q&A tab, and Martin should show that on the screen.
Oh, sorry.
For clarification.
Can I? Hang on. Let's move my cursor over to the screen, and then it will be magically appearing. There it is.
Yeah, there it is. So that button there, that lets us better focus and find your questions. And if possible, keep your questions on topic, but we will try to answer everyone's questions. So I'll see you later and enjoy today's webinar.
Thank you, Karen. Right, okay. So, as said before, this is working with large projects. So what do I mean by that? Well, large projects are projects that contain lots of individual panoramas, or as we call them, nodes, so multi-node projects that can run into the hundreds, thousands, or working with extremely large images like gigapixels, and a mixture of the two, having large gigapixel virtual tours. Okay, so that's the sort of thing we're looking at. Okay, now before I start and go anywhere, what I want to do is just discuss the two things that really cause, or the thing that really causes a problem, and that's the cache image memory. So if I open up this folder, you'll see I've got an image here. It's a gigapixel image. If I click and get the information, you'll see it's 397 odd gig. Now, of course, when we load this into Pano2VR, what will happen is, under normal circumstances, Pano2VR would have to make a copy of that and then look at all of the different resolutions. And of course, once you go past your memory, your memory hint with inside Pano2VR, which I'll show you in a second, then Pano2VR then starts to look for a cache image location. Generally speaking, that's within the OS, but you have the ability of deciding where you want that. Okay, so without further ado, he says, what I'm going to do is open up Pano2VR and make these adjustments. So the first thing I want to stop happening is this pop-up screen. Every time you open Pano2VR, you get the welcome screen. It's very good if you're going in between projects, but for today, I'm going to deselect that and close it. I don't want to see that every time I open it. And the other thing I'm going to do today is every time we click the Create Output button, Pano2VR will ask me, do I want to confirm the overwrite? So I'm going to go under the Preferences and Advanced. On the PC, it's File Settings, Advanced, and I'm going to deselect Confirm Overwrite. Okay, so that's a couple of the things I wanted to do just to adjust Pano2VR for today's webinar. The other thing I want to do is if we go back to Preferences, so again File Settings for the PC. If I just hit the space bar, yeah, good, it's there. I just wanted to make sure that I've got my keys shown. So basically, if I go back to the Preferences again, File Settings, what I'm looking for is, if we go under Images, we've got this memory size hint. Now, it should be half of your physical RAM. Now, I've got 64 gig of RAM. I'm lucky enough to have that amount on my Mac. So my memory size hint is roughly, is using half of this. Quick tip here is, if you're doing less hungry or memory hungry tasks within Pano2VR, but you've got something like Photoshop and you're doing lots of Photoshop work, now of course if Pano2VR is eating into half of that, what you can do is adjust that size here. So Pano2VR uses less memory, so you can give it to Photoshop, so you can have the two applications running side by side and letting Photoshop be that little bit more efficient because it's using that little bit more memory. But generally speaking, Pano2VR will use half of this. Now what I want to do is, if we go to the Files tab here, you will see I've got an image cache location, and this is now it's using an area on the hard drive of. So what I want to do is change this, and I want to put it into a folder so we can see what's going on with it throughout this webinar. So I'm going to choose a different location. I'm going to select the desktop and I'm going to choose a new folder, not nude folder, do apologize, and that's image cache. All right, here we go. Click create and open. All right, so that's now users webinar desktop. That's where I'm now sticking all my cache files. Now what I'm going to do is move that over to the top there. So that's now my new image cache location. If you've got a computer and you've only got a certain amount of hard drive space, what is a real good plus here is if you've got, I don't know, one of these, 500 gigabyte SSD drives, one of these little Samsungs or whatever, like USB 3s, they're really, really good. So any fast SSD drive will really benefit you if you're going to start using lots and lots of images and you need to access cache. Right, so that's my image cache location. I'm just going to double check, because I like to do this within the settings to make sure that that we are indeed using that. So we are good. Right, okay. And as soon as I open Pano2VR, what I should see is that cache file being generated, and that will be get the info on that. That will be 0 KB. So there's nothing in there. So that's basically me setting up for this project, and now what we can see is what the cache is doing. Right, so going to start then with open up the project, and I've got a folder with 625 JPEGs, all from a theta. I'm going to drop them in, and you can start to see that Pano2VR starts to load these images. Now there's quite a few images here, and you'll see that wherever you see a egg timer is where the image is not loaded, and Pano2VR has to load this image. So that's a good hint that's happening. Now the good thing with Pano2VR is whilst that's going on, you don't have to sit and wait. You can be getting on with work straight away. As an example, if I select this image, drag and drop, and set my hotspots, I've just set it both ways, I can carry on doing all my hotspots, and if I scroll down, you can see Pano2VR is actually not loaded all the images yet, but yet we can start to work on the project. Also, which is quite impressive as well, is if we, as these were taken from a theta, all of these images are geotagged. So if I open up the tour map, you'll see that there you go, there's all of those images. So whilst it's still loading, I could in fact zoom in, and you can see that I've only I've only linked the first two panoramas there. You can see a little blue bar, I don't know if you can, but we could also go automatic linking closest node, boom, and I've now set all the hotspots in this tour. Okay, so that's quite impressive in itself, just linking up this amount of images in one quick swift click. I mean, literally I'll just need to go to the Google Street View panel, pick a place, upload to Street View, done. It's as quick as that. So, but are we still loading? Yes, we are. Now interestingly, what I want to do is now have a look at the image cache and see what that's doing. So let's go to the info, and you'll see now that we've gone past our 32 gig, and I'm now adding more. So this is our image cache location, so I'll leave that up there so we can see it and doing what it's doing. So there you go, that's Pano2VR opened up the project. It's actually opened it quite quickly, very, very quickly. We can start to work with the images even though the others aren't loaded yet. And it's just dealing with it. Now, this is the issue, and one of the biggest things that we get is on support is, oh, I've got a blank image, or I've got blank tiles, or I've got blank this, that, and the other. Now, speaking with Thomas earlier on, he's discovered that the OS lies to Pano2VR. When you go to, say, like Finder on the Mac or Explorer on the PC, and you right button click, look at the properties and see how big that file is or how big that storage area isn't that accurate. So Pano2VR is looking at this and thinking, I've got this amount of space to play with, but it doesn't. So you end up with some tiles being black or corrupted in some sort of way. So what we say there is, look, if you're going to be dealing with large projects, make sure that your cache location is large, it's empty, you've got plenty of space. You have to think of it as if you've got an image and you bring it into Pano2VR. Pano2VR makes a copy of it, and then it also has to make copies of the multi-resolution. So it works out to be about a third larger than what the actual image is. So this is why the cache location fills up quite quickly. Okay, so that's basically why we have cache and what happens and why we can have issues with cache. But how can we deal with this? How can we sort of better work with this amount of images? Right, well, what I'm going to do is close Pano2VR. Here we go, I'm not going to save it. This should, once it closes, it obviously deletes the cache file behind it, so that's gone and that will disappear. What I'm going to do now is reopen Pano2VR and show you a couple of settings that are for such projects. So we'll go Pano2VR preferences, again file settings for the PC, and here underneath we will have load all the images immediately. So that's what happens at the moment. These are the default settings under large projects. So as soon as I put an image in there, or any images in there, Pano2VR starts to load them into its memory. Okay, now what I can do is deselect that. All right, if I click OK and we'll go back to that same project, drop it in, you will now see that he says, I know what I did, sorry, hang on, let me stop that. I do like to confirm settings and I didn't on that one. So Pano2VR preferences, advanced, so load image immediately. No, that's all okay. No, that we're good. So let's just restart. When you do actually do anything in the preference settings, some settings are real time, it will work straight away. Sometimes you need to do a restart on Pano2VR. I think the best thing to do is just do a restart. Anyway, so we're just going to drop those in, and basically there we go, that's exactly what I needed to do, was just restart Pano2VR. As you can see, we've only loaded that first image and it's the image that we're seeing. Okay, so we've got all the others with the hourglass telling me that they're not loaded. Now when you're dealing with such images like theta images, as soon as you select one, it will load really quickly. Boom, you know, you don't even see a load bar. So this is really good setting if you want to minimize the cache. Here now you can see, if I go back to the information, you'll see that that cache is sitting at 0. So this is all working within the memory hint of of the RAM that Pano2VR can use on the computer. It doesn't need to start using the cache. All right, so I can start to click around. Now the settings are at the moment, I don't automatically load the images unless they are required. So this is a real good way of, you know, dealing with, again, lots and lots and lots of images. You don't have massive amounts of RAM or cache memory, but this does allow you to work with them. Now we've got another little setting here, so let's go back to that, the preferences, and have a look under advanced, and that's unload images to save memory. Now if I select this and click OK, all right, I am actually going to restart Pano2VR because I need to. Here we go. Again, I'll just confirm that setting. So under advanced, so unload memory images to save memory. Right, what's going to happen now is I'm going to choose let's have a look at this project. This is the synagogue panorama, and this is a gigapixel. And basically, if I was to drag and drop this into Pano2VR, it would actually fit into, hang on, let's go to this one, it would actually fit into the cache. So if I do that, and let's have a look at this cache file then, so let's get the information for that, and just close that folder. All right, so you can see that's at 0. If I now select all of these, all right, and drag them in, I have now got 10 copies of this gigapixel Pano. Now, we've done nothing special with this, but you'll see that I'm not using any cache. All right, we've loaded the first two because they will fit into my computer's RAM or the memory hint that Pano2VR is using. If I select a third one, which will be over that, right, that will start to load that image in. Okay, and when it's loaded, you'll see that we've unloaded that one. So again, working with a really big project, I'm using, these are all Giga Panoramas, just to show you what these are. If I select this, there's 10 nodes. The whole tour is 269, gigapixels. Each image is 2.5 gigapixels. This is not little images. These are huge. But yet, look how fast. This is all real time. Look how fast we're dealing with this. But as I say, with those two settings, I'm still at 0 cache. I'm not using any cache because Pano2VR will then load the image it can. Here we go. So I just click on a new one. You can see that it's loading it. And when it's loaded into memory, those two are now off. It's dropped those. So the only one now loaded within Pano2VR's memory is this one. Okay, on that little note, I'm going to bring Karen in and ask do we have any questions with anything we've done so far?
So we have just one question, which doesn't really have to do with what we've done so far, but it does have to deal with the settings. So Kevin asks, are the interpolation filters and checkbox in the preferences relevant for larger tours?
Obviously, with the interpolation filter, I don't know if you could imagine like sharpening filters. If the sharper the image is, the more memory, or rather the more file, or the larger the file size of the output. With other settings, like do we divide by 4 or divide by pi? If you divide by pi, you get a much higher resolution per your cube face. And
can you show those on the screen?
Certainly. Sorry. Right. Okay. So let's go to Pano2VR preferences. So under the advanced, then we have remapping. We have where is it? Was it use width pi as our output factor? That is deselected. So we just basically have your input image, divide it by 4, and those are your cube face sizes. We can actually select divide by pi. The reason why we leave it at 4 is because if you decide to manually set up your multi-resolution levels, if you've got even numbers, it's easy to work out all of your levels. If you're dividing by pi, 3 dot whatever it is, blah blah blah, then you're trying to work out the levels. It's a little bit more complicated. But having said that, with this selected, Pano2VR will get to the closest, and it sort of sorts it out for itself anyway. But the upshot is that you'll have larger file sizes because you'll have higher resolution cubes for the same image. Okay, so that's basically that setting there. So yes, it does affect the output.
Does it have? Sorry to interrupt. Does it have? Is that any different than the setting for remapping?
This is this is how it remaps. Oh, sorry. What the? You confused me. Which one?
So there's two settings for choosing width divided by pi. One is in the output section, and one is in the remapping section. Move your mouse just a little. There you go.
I think this is I think this is just for the input, if I do remember rightly. Right. The teletype is going. My live feed to Thomas, the the man who can. One is convert input. Yep. Hang on, and then the other one is obviously the output. The other is output. Yeah. So that one's sure. So the remapping is the input, and then that one is the output. Hence why it's under the output.
Right. And I think, at least for my question is, on the input, does this have to do anything with speed?
I don't know. I think if we use pi as the input conversion, we're actually getting the highest pixel count you can, because we're actually using a spherical image, and we're using a spherical calculation, I suppose. So we're probably going to get the very best quality with remapping using pi on the input.
Okay. All right. So let's see. We have, and just to clarify, using the interpolation filters in
Go to
the
images.
images folder, this affects the output.
It affects the output size, yes, and also affects the speed as well. Basically, I think the easiest way to explain these would be, I don't know, sharpening filters. I've covered this a few times, really, but if you've got something like, if you've created a panorama with a DLSR fisheye lens, where you've stitched the image through that stitching process, and creating the equirectangular, you would probably have added some sharpening to it, because you'd add sharpening to your raw files before converting them to TIFFs, before converting them into an equirectangular using Stitcher. So there are several stages to create your equirectangular image, and there are several stages where you might have added sharpening. So we add a tiny little bit with Mitchell, but nothing major. Now, we have been criticised in the past for this, because other panorama players use a really big sharpening filter and you whack your panorama in. These pictures look really sharp. But in some cases, if you've got railings or something like that, or a patterned roof on a building, you start to see a lot of moire where they've been over sharpened. So our default is to back this off. It's because you guys would have had, you would have added all the sharpening in your image creation before bringing it into Pano2VR. So therefore, you don't want Pano2VR doing it adding any more. However, if you're using a one-shot camera, then yeah, you might want to use Lancos 3 or even Blackman Sync or whatever, to add that little bit of extra sharpening. But our default is Mitchell, and of course, the more sharpening you add, the more processing it takes, and that affects the file size and the speed and everything else. But it does depend on your machine. If you've got, I'm working on an iMac Pro with 10 cores. I probably wouldn't see a lot of difference between the two. If I was, I also test using Windows on a little Surface Go, which has got a 1-core Pentium Pro processor, and of course that takes forever. So yeah, you would see a big difference there.
Okay, anyway. Cool. So Kevin says thanks. So
okay.
Yeah, Michael is asking, what size of image do you suggest for normal tours?
That's a good question. It's how long's a piece of string? Half its length. Basically, I like to shoot about 12K if I'm going to use a camera, or if I'm using a one shot, the maximum resolution from the one shot, because they're only about 7-8K. But basically, for anything I've done, I use about 12K. Other people, and really that's actually down to my hardware. I don't, I use a crop frame Canon 750D with a 8mm fisheye, and that produces nice images for me. So yeah, that's what I use. Other people, a Canon 5DS, whatever it is, that's doing 50 megapixel sensors, and they're producing 19 on 20. It's whatever floats your boat. The good news is you can chuck it in Pano2VR and it won't be an issue. So,
right. So it's it's like opening a can of worms right there. So
it's
okay, we won't get into it. So sorry.
Okay, all right. Let's not then. Let's move on.
Let's move on. We're talking about large projects. So Hal's asking if you use pi, width divided by pi as output, will the final resolution be higher?
Yes, then if you divide it by 4, because you're increasing the pixel count per cube face.
Yeah. All right. So that was all the questions so far, and
awesome.
Continue.
Right. Okie dokie. Right. Okay. So I'll carry on then from where I am, which is in this the preferences. So again, file settings for the PC, preferences for the Mac, and so if you're going to be dealing with large projects and you want to use your cache image, and you don't have a lot of cache, then you can use these settings. Speed. speed of loading can be an issue if you've got very big panoramas. As an example, I have here, now this is a pretty good example as it goes. If I just close that, there we go. So that's that image cache gone, and let's go back to my project folder. Now we had a look at this Prague image, and let's have a look at what size this is. It's 397 gig. All right, so let's have this in our brains a second. All right, so here is a folder full of these other gigapanoramas, the synagogue, and we have a look at this folder, and this is 15.9 gig. All right, so there's a huge difference there. So let's just open up Pano2VR and dump this folder for, now these are just standard TIFFs. I'm going to dump them in, and you're going to see these images start to load. All right, so this is what it's doing. Okay, so you can see it's taking its time. Okay, well the thumbnails have arrived, but you can still see the little hourglass. So if I click on that one, you can see that that's now loading, and so on. So it's going to take a little bit of time to load. All right, now I'm going to throw this open to the board. I'm going to give somebody, I'm going to give you a few seconds to chuck some answers in. But how long do we reckon this big old Prague picture is going to take to load in Pano2VR? I don't know if you can just chuck some
How
feedback.
many gigabytes is it again?
Right, okay. It is 397.08 gigabytes. That
Let's
one,
round it off to 400 gigabyte file.
yeah,
That's
so-
one single file.
That's one single file. Where I was loading that the synagogue, that folder that contains 10 TIFFs was taking an age. You see them loading very slowly. Each one of these, let's have a look in comparison, is 1.59 gig. All right. So how long is 400 gig going to take to load? Is anyone chucking any info? Anyone going to throw any answers in there?
No one's got. Kevin says his guess is 3 minutes, and so does Richard says 3 minutes.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna say half a day. No.
Right. Okay.
Marcus says 1 second.
All right.
Michael says 10 minutes. We've got more. Let's see. Thomas says 3 minutes. Sounds reasonable.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, I'll put you all out your miseries. All right. And we'll do it, shall we? So there's Pano2VR. There's the image. Boom. Done. Ready to go. Full resolution in. That was pretty impressive, wasn't it?
Less than a second?
Yeah, it's 0.8, I think Thomas measured it at one point. I don't know, but it's...
All right, so Marcus wins.
Yeah. And it's the full resolution as well. So
Yeah, can you zoom into that too? I mean,
Yeah,
is it
yeah.
ready for you to zoom in?
Yeah. No, it's ready to go straight away. I like this because in this bit here, unwillingly, there's people watching. Now, I've got to be careful because at this sort of zoom level,
Right.
a slight little movement on the mouse and the image shoots all over the place, as you can imagine, because we're zoomed right in. But that is...
You did a command tab to show just the viewer.
Yep. There we go.
There. So, yeah. And Richard is asking, what's in the cache? What does the cache look like? Or are you getting to that? Sorry to just jump in there. And
The cache is... Are you ready? Steady. Boom. 0. How cool is that? Why is this happening? Right. Well,
Magic.
again, we'll put you out of your misery. These are tiled TIFFs, or pyramid TIFFs, if you like. So basically, all the multi-resolution data is in the image. Pano2VR doesn't have to remap it or work out what its size is or what its level is or anything like that. Which, as you can imagine, makes loading really stupidly big projects really quick. As an example, the synagogue, you saw what I was doing with this folder, which was just 10 standard TIFFs. All right, I'm going to open this up. These are 4 little folders, and in total, that's 100 images of the synagogue. All right, but these are tiled TIFFs. If I drop them in, boom, They're all loaded and ready to go, or will be. Hang on, no, he says, why didn't I do that? Hang on, you need to uncheck load at start. Yes, Thomas. Right, so yeah, if we go to settings, preferences, advanced, I can actually, no, hang on, actually, do I need to? I don't really need to do that, do I? Not really, because that shouldn't really affect it. Hang on, let me close that and restart. Thomas is typing, he's probably going to say yes it does. So let me just so if I, so here's a group of, drop it in, boom, here we go, done. So yeah, I just needed to restart Pano2VR because I hadn't done it. But yeah, basically with the standard settings using tiled TIFFs, 100 nodes, that's 256 gigapixels. That's it's 2.5 gigapixels per image. It's loaded instantly, and you're ready to rock and roll with this. You've got the high resolution. You can add your you can add your hotspots and work with this like any other project. You could work like this was just using low res JPEGs. The thing to remember with this is we're saving the image cache. So obviously there is a file size for your images. So here, for argument's sake, the file size for this lot, for this folder, so I need 307 gigs on my hard drive, and when I make an output and I've got all the tiles there, I'm going to need something similar for my output as well. Well, not quite similar, it's actually going to reduce it because I'm using JPEGs, tiles, I don't know, probably half the size again, but you know, you're going to need space. But what this does stop is the need for cache. It also stops the need to wait for things to load. You can open Pano2VR, get straight into the project and use it. Right, okay, so how do we make a tiled TIFF? So that's easy enough. Let's go to Pano2VR and I will show you. So here we go, this is Pano2VR open. I'm going to grab one of these images. This is a tiled image. If I drop that in, boom, it's loaded, done. If this is the untiled version, it needs to load. That's the difference, all right? So how can I convert this untiled one into a tiled TIFF? Well, you can select it, go to the properties panel, so you can see the properties of my image. I really do need to save the project first. So let's just save that into the same folder, all right? And then what we can do is convert input, and we are now going to convert that input image to an equirectangular, but the format will be TIFF. And we automatically look at the TIFF file, and if it's too large, we automatically use this big TIFF type format. It's still .TIFF, but we will use this tiled TIFF format. Now, Karen's just asked on our teletype, what is a tiled TIFF? Right, a tiled TIFF is basically a single image. It's a TIFF image, but it contains all the multi-resolution data. It contains all of its data. So, you know, how big is it and all the different levels it's going to create and all of that. Now, without being a tiled TIFF, Pano2VR has to take the normal TIFF in, or the image, and it has to examine it, it's got to remap it, it's got to look at all the different levels that it can have in multi-resolution. This all takes time. This also needs to be put somewhere. That's where the image cache start to be used, because we're taking this data and we're putting it somewhere because we're going to need it later on when building the tour. If the image already has this data, then basically we're just looking at the image. We're loading directly from the image. No cache file is required. So again, let's just nip back to say, right, how do we create this then? So you select your image, go to convert input, and the default is equirectangular TIFF, and I can select default. What will happen is Pano2VR will remap this and create a new image, a new tiled TIFF, and it will use that within the project. Okay, now what you can also do is if I was to add more of these, let's just add a few more, dump them in. I love we can do even with just normal TIFFs. Look how fast Pano2VR is. I just love that we can do this. It makes my life presenting this a lot easier. But anyway, basically what I can do is I can select all of those, convert input, and the only giveaway here now is this $N sign, and basically what we're going to do is convert all of these. So you can just load up all your images, hit the convert button, and it will convert all of those into TIFF. Okay, all right. Another way that we can create this is if we add a transformation output. All right, we can select this, and I can say settings. I will select equirectangular. I'll leave it at the default view. I would select TIFF, where are you, down here, as my output. And what I would also do is edit the file path, because what it's going to do is output these and call these all the same thing, Pano2TIFF. So one would overwrite the other. So I would just edit this with one of our what we call placeholders. So it's $, open bracket and close bracket. Basically placeholders in Pano2VR is a way of picking data up from elsewhere. A $N placeholder is picking up the file name of the input image. So therefore, as we remap every single image, we're using that image's own file name. All right, so that's how we would set that up. So now what I would do is click the create output button or generate output button, and we would go through here making new equirectangular images in an output folder ready to work with a project. All right, one other way of doing this, which is my preferred way, is use a droplet. Okay, and basically how to do that is I'm going to open up Pano2VR, a blank project. I'm going to go back to the output, add a transformations output, set that exactly how we had it before. So let's just open up this panel a bit so we can see it better. So equirectangular, default view, set that to being a TIFF, and we'll set the output to, oh, I'll just delete that, didn't want to do that, to $N, open bracket and close bracket, oh sorry, $, open and close, click OK. All right, now what I'm going to do is to create the droplet, I will go into Pano2VR, File, Save as Droplet. I don't want to save any values in a file. I don't want to force it. I don't want to create a sync. I don't want to do any of that. Just create the droplet, and I'll just put, just call it convert to TIFF, put it on my desktop, click save. Here we go. Right. He says, and there it is. Right. I can now close Pano2VR, save changes. I don't want to save the project file, and there is my droplet. So what will happen now is, let's just do this with a few of the theta images, is I can literally, actually no, what I'll do, feeling brave, is once you've created all your panoramas, your giga panoramas, or whatever you've done with your stitcher and whatnot, when you've got your folder, before you start to build the tour, you'll just drag and drop that folder onto the droplet, and what the droplet will do, okay, you can see I've not done this before. Oh, hang on, right, do apologise. Right, hang on, let's get rid of this because this interferes with that. So let's click that, and I can turn this back on. Sorry. Right, okay. It's just because I've not used it on this build before. Right, so basically what Pano2VR is now doing is, or this droplet is doing, is taking each image, looking at it, remapping it, turning it into a TIFF and saving it. Now, the reason why you'd use a droplet is if you don't have enough space to have all your big files in to create a tour, all right, then you can't use the first two methods, because that required you to add all of the images to Pano2VR first. This method is basically drag and drop. I know it's going to take a while. I'm really not going to wait for it to finish, but basically I'm going to stop it there actually. But basically what it's doing is it's dealing with one image at a time, and it's making the TIFFs here. So there's all the TIFFs that it's created. So these could have been your Giga Panoramas or whatever, or your very large TIFFs, your 20k TIFFs or whatever, and you've got, I don't know, a couple of thousand of them. Drop it onto the droplet. I know that part of the process will take a bit of time, but once you've got this output folder full of these particular images, it really is as quick as, let's just do this because this is just amazing. It's just drag, drop, done. All loaded. There's no egg timers. All of those images are in straight away, and these could be huge files as well. So yeah, that's that. So this is basically converting your images into the big TIFF or the pyramid TIFF format to speed things up, and you really don't need image cache. Okay, I'm gonna stop there and open it up for Karen to see if we've got any questions, whilst I grab a drink. Because I need one.
Yeah. So I'm just looking. Looks like a few questions disappeared. Oh, okay. No, because everyone was asking what are tiled TIFFs and
Right,
how do you create them? Yeah. Okay. So, and you answered that. So Corolla is asking, he's asking for a feature request. Is it possible to build in a search function for very large virtual tours that can be used to search for and show a particular node? So, like if you've added a label or something like that.
I've yet to cover this little bit, but go on.
Oh, okay. You're going to cover that a little bit?
I'm going to cover tags.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a way to do tags, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll be. That's
we'll
the
get
next.
To that later.
This is the next thing after dealing with how to get images in and not use up loads of space. So that's what we've just done. So dealing with that is the next bit.
That's the next thing. So Corolla, if there's something in that explanation that wasn't answered, just, write another question. We'll hit you on that one. All right. So Marcus is asking, how was thanks for writing back, Marcus, the Prague gigapixel panorama made so that when you can zoom in for kilometers and it's so sharp.
That wasn't me. No, that was
so it's basically you're making a panorama and you're taking multiple pictures at different distances, and you have a really, really, really long lens, so that you can go really far. So this picture was taken by Jeffrey Martin, who does these gigapixel panoramas. He's got a bunch of them, and I'm pretty sure he is using it on a motorized panorama head, probably like a gigapan head or something like this. Could be, but we didn't make this panorama personally, but that's how you would go about making a gigapixel panorama. Yeah. Anything to add to that, Martin? Or
no, just I think another little trick is focus stacking as well, is because obviously if you're zoomed out, or if you're zooming in right to the background and you've got something a bit closer, then obviously you can't use the one fixed lens as it's going click click click. So you've got to do things like focus stacking and all. It's very, very technical. I know the ins and outs of it to the degree of I know that. Give it to Jeffrey.
Yeah, but you can make smaller gigapixel panoramas, just
absolutely. I think the synagogue was I think was it who's the guy that made the synagogue? Names on my tongue. That's the kiddie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was done on a manual. If I remember rightly, I could be wrong, but I think that was done on a manual. I think Nodal Ninja had a manual gigapixel head where you could, change the tilt and have small increments or indents. I could be wrong, but I have a funny feeling that's how that was made. So that was done manually. Of course, inside the synagogue, nothing's moving. There was no one in there. You've got plenty of time to do it. So.
No, I think Thomas is saying, I think the synagogue was using Dr. Klaus.
Oh, right, okay. Motorized head. All right. I told you I could be wrong. There you go. I was right.
This just makes it easy. Otherwise, you're sitting there taking thousands of images with your finger or your,
Yeah, absolutely. But
yeah. And so just to carry on, Richard Butler is, also saying he uses a Ronin S to create some gigapixel images, which is cool. That's a nice way to do some images, because it's automatic and yeah. Okay, we could talk about that for ages, but let's move on. Thanks for the question. Thomas is asking, does the conversion work on layered TIFFs, or do they first get merged down to a background layer only?
Our Thomas is on the teletype. I don't know what Pano2VR does behind the scenes.
It only uses the top layer.
It only uses the top layer. There you go.
Hal is asking, if you've already created a large tour, can you convert and substitute the new tiled TIFFs without losing information you've already created?
Absolutely. All you do is you just, if you do as an example, on the Mac Command A to select all of them, you could do, Control A on the PC, convert, boom. As it converts them, it replaces them in the tour browser. So all of the user data and all of the hotspots are still there. You're just swapping the images out. But Thomas is on the teletype. He's saying something different. Hang on, let me have a look. What's he saying? But as far as I've been playing with it, nothing changes. It just literally swaps out the image. And this was made exactly for this. So I was right what I was saying, but yeah, Thomas is saying this was the whole reason why he did this convert input, is because once you've been working with a project and you decide, you want to convert the input, you can do that, convert the images, and no data will change. So you won't lose anything. So, yeah. Oh, that was cool. I thought I was saying something wrong then, but obviously I was right. So,
you're right on. It was a good question, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really good question. So, Laurent, this question was answered, but I will say it live. So Laurent was asking, he's like, maybe I missed something, but why are you transforming JPEGs to TIFFs? And Kevin, who was asking earlier, he answered because of loading speed and lack of space for the cache images.
That's it. Even, that 625 theta nodes, and so not even high resolution, it still took up over 100 gig of cache file for a 625 nodes. Yeah. So, that's, and if you don't have a spare 125 gigs sitting on your hard drive, if they were TIFFs that wouldn't take up 125 gigs worth of space, yes, they'll be a lot larger than your JPEGs, but they wouldn't be as large as the cache file needed. But if you converted them all into pyramid TIFFs or tiled TIFFs, then you don't need any cache. And the other thing is, as well, is when you open the project, it opens instantly. There's no time. So if you're going in and out, changing the skin, doing things, going in, setting up hotspots, and then you decide you want to pop up hotspot here and there, working with huge files and working with huge projects is just as quick as working with 3 or 4 nodes using a theta output. That's the whole beauty of this, is the speed. So, but as a personal thing, when I make any large images, from my Canon, I use my DLSR. I have, just over 12, almost 13K images. Straight away, I just convert to tiled TIFFs. I just do it as a matter of course. I don't even think about it. I just do it because I know if I'm going to keep opening and shutting it, everything's just instant. And and I can take that project to my MacBook. I can bring it onto my bigger computer in the office. I can take it to my MacBook, and my MacBook's not going to struggle with it because the tiled TIFFs, it's just going to open. Job done. So, yeah.
So just really quick, I just want to point everybody to now the chat that Thomas had posted the promotional video, and there's some background on Jeffrey's gigapixel image. Right, so you can bookmark that, watch it later. You finish watching the webinar and then you can watch that later. Unless you're really good at doing more than one thing at the same time. You should,
right. To our Thomas, you should only do things like that right at the end.
All right, so there's another question from Anonymous. Do I understand this right? You work first with tiled TIFFs and the output will be with JPEG?
Yes, because when you're working with Pano2VR, the the issue is opening Pano2VR and bringing everything into Pano2VR to work with your images. So you if you like, you shouldn't confuse input to output. Output will be JPEGs. Again, I'm not quite there yet. That's the next part of the webinar to cover, and I am also very, very conscious of the time, but I think this is a subject worth covering in detail. But all we've done is talked about large images, large amounts of images, bringing it into the project file and just getting them in there quickly so you can manage it. So now the next part of the webinar is, well, what do you do once the images are here? What can you do? How can you manage them? If I've got 1,000 images, how can I set the same name to all of them, or the same author or something like that, or adjust, I don't know, GPS height or whatever. So that's going to be the next part. So I'll cover it there.
And you can move into the next part. That was the last question we've got.
Awesome. Right. Okay. So we have this project file now. This project file, so let's go back to our overview. This has got 46 images, right? So that was just let's just get rid of that, and I'll bin that because we don't need those. And let's go back to, I think, let's go back to, let's have a look, synagogue. And the synagogue, what I did is, we showed you these are the standard TIFFs and how long they were taking to load. And here is the folders. What I've done, and this is a good point, because now we can get images into Pano2VR really, really quickly. But how do you manage them? I mean, you've got a tour browser here full of images, right? So how can we manage that? Right, well, I'll tell you what we'll do is, if we go to floor plan, right, what I've got here now, this isn't a huge amount of images, but it does highlight what I'm saying, is that, if you've taken, I don't know, 400 images of one town, 300 images of another town, 600 images of another town, you drop them all into Pano2VR, you've got loads of images sitting into the tour browser. How do you manage them? Well, the best way to manage them, first of all, is to separate all of your panoramas into their subfolders. All right, to give you some sort of hierarchy. And the idea is if I just drag and drop those in, they do all load. But what I've now got is the Pano2VR picks up the folder name and assigns that as a tag to the images. So if I go to viewing parameters, user data, you'll see that the first floor nodes get the tag first. And if I go over here, the ground floor nodes, I mean, I didn't put them in any particular order in second. But what this does do is, in the tour browser, I have this filtering. I can select to see only ground floor panoramas. Not only that, I can actually add a color to them. So I can, hang on, let's do that. So assign a color, orange. So there's all of those. I've now assigned a color to orange. I can, if I select first, everything will disappear because I don't have any panoramas with the tags ground and first. But if I delete the ground, I will now see all the panoramas with the tag ground. So let's select one of those, first, not ground, and assign a color. Let's do that blue. And if I then delete that, we can now obviously see some sorting with the tags with the colors as well. But the idea of managing this amount of images is, for me, put them in subfolders, start to add categories, and then you can start to filter out the tour browser. Obviously, you can make the tour browser larger. You can even undock it and move it onto another screen or wherever you want to. With Pano2VR, it's quite flexible in its way of working. All right, so you could even move that onto another screen and just have a screen full of these, and then you can filter them. If you do get into a pickle with your, I say a pickle, if you get into problems with browsers and panels undocked, it's just Option 1 on your keyboard or Alt 1 on the PC, and that puts everything back. You can also go window arrangement standard, and you can actually change the window arrangements and save whichever arrangements you got, but that's a webinar for another day. Okay, so that's basically dealing with different amounts of panoramas. If you want to deal with data, so let's, for argument's sake, we go to user data. I want to set the side nodes. Let's set the height. Do we have GPS in these? No, we don't, so I won't bother doing that. But let's just say, right, okay, I want to set an author to all of the panoramas. I can actually just, let's just put in and click the copy button. That is going to copy the author to all panoramas. That's now done. That will be on all of them. If I filter out for just say the ground floor, I can select the ground floor panoramas and give them, I don't know, a description. So house 1 as an example. When I click the copy button, it's going to give me the option to add that description to all the nodes of the project or just those selected ones. All right, so if I click just selected, okay, what I can do now is if I take away the tag for the filtering, you'll see that all the others don't have it. Only those ones that were selected can have the description. So again, this is, how do you work with this amount of images? So these are some of the tricks that we can do. Another trick that we did, you're probably aware, I'm going to close this and open up Pano2VR again with another project, which is going to be our 625 nodes. Now, the reason why I'm going back to this, I'm going to do option 1 just to reset all my panels. Here we go. The reason why I'm doing this is we know that there is, if I go to the overview panel, we know we've got 625 nodes, all right? Now, what Pano2VR does is if your input images are have geolocation, so they've got GPS, we have ghost hotspots, all right? Now, theoretically, I should see a grey line going across here. If I open up the map, you'll see that I would have a hotspot or a ghost hotspot representing every single panorama. So I would have a thick grey line of ghost hotspots, all right? But we haven't. Why? Because we thought of that. How this works is that you'll see the ghost hotspot to the node closest to you. So if you've got nodes behind, because there's going to be loads of nodes going around the shore, because this is where I went right around here. So instead of seeing, as I say, a big thick grey line going across here through these ghost hotspots, we only see the one closest to us. As we zoom in, or not so much zoom in, but as we start to work and go to the next node, we then start to see those nodes as well. So that's quite, I think that's quite a good helper, that you don't end up with this grey line. But even if the ghost hotspots are a problem, you can actually switch them off here. But Pano2VR has been built in the way that it will only show like the closest node. Now there is something like if it's a degree behind it. This one I remember talking to Thomas yesterday. You must understand, I'm the user. I'm the one that uses Pano2VR, all the nuts and bolts and the steam and the engine that goes behind it. That's a Thomas and Christoph thing. So the exact calculation for this, I'm not too sure of. I think if it's 1 degree behind a node, it's hidden or something like that. But yeah, so with the ghost hotspots, we keep that manageable as well. With selecting nodes, if you want to select different nodes within a group, so let's just put everything back. So let's, if I open that up a little bit, so if I put it down, we have the slider that all the nodes go across. If I bring it up by using this handle, you'll see you get 2 nodes. We then have a vertical scrubber. All right. If I wanted to select some nodes in the middle, I can, on the PC or on the Mac, I can command click to select one. I can then command click and select as many as I want. Or if I hold down the shift click, I'm selecting that group, so from the top to where I was. So let's just hang on. Let's just do that again. So I go there, shift click. That's just that number of nodes. Again, I could go into the user data, change that data, and only affect those number of nodes. So again, that's all part and parcel of working with the large amounts of panoramas. The other thing as well, which we've not touched on, and I don't think we've actually touched on any of the webinars we've done, is this also works with flat images as well. It's not just spherical equirectangulars. As a example, he says, no, that's the forum, so let's not do that. Let's go to, where are we going to go? That's the tool. Right, if we go to products, Pano2VR, if we go to our examples, here we go, flat giga panorama. This is I actually forget the size of it now, but it's big, and it's a giga panorama, and it's just a flat image. So again, we've tiled it up, and there it is. We can spot people on top of the tower. There you go. So there you go. So not only is it spherical images, it is also flats as well. So you could build a tour with lots of flat giga panoramas, or even just hundreds of thousands of flat images. Anyway, open it up one more time for questions. Karen, do we have any more?
Yeah, so we have a question from Mark. I'm just reading it now, sorry. He says, I keep original panoramas in a folder and the Pano2VR projects and their outputs in a different folder on a different drive. Are there any issues I should be aware of that might cause problems? He says, I noticed you like to keep your assets in the Pano2VR folder.
I like to keep everything in one folder. So I have what I call a project folder. In that project folder is my input images, any dependencies that project will have, like any external videos or pop-up images. I like to have my panoramas in there with my project file, and then the output as a subfolder. The only reason why I do that is because it's easier to manage. I've only got one folder and one location to worry about. Does it matter? No, to a certain degree, and I'm going to say that. Now this, right, as I say, we spoke about all the inputs and things like that. What happens is when we build an output is Pano2VR creates an output folder, and inside that output folder is the tiles folder, and we then create our little tiny tiles which the images are made up with, all right, and all the different levels. And the idea is that you open up your panorama, we look at the size of the window that it's being looked at or opened in, and we then select the correct tile size or level, the correct level to fill that window. All right, for the same sort of, I think it's a 2:1 pixel ratio of screen size stroke image size. And the idea is as you zoom in and you go beyond that, so 2 screen pixels for an image or something like that, we actually change out the resolution and we go higher resolution. So this is where this deep zoom comes from, and it seems seamless, but in the background we're swapping out these tiles. Right, once you've done it once, if you click the create output button again, it shouldn't create another output. So as an example, what I'm going to do is just show you this really. So if I just open up Pano2VR, select a bunch of images, dump them in, create an output. I know this isn't a lot of images, but this will serve a purpose. So I'm saving the output. You'll see that we're remapping all of those images and creating the levels, the multi-resolution levels. Okay. All right. If I click the remap button again, or the create the output button again, you'll notice that we didn't have to remap anything. How this works is if the input image is, or rather if the output images are newer than the input images, then Pano2VR will not remap and make the images again. All right. If you then go back to an image, and what I'm going to do here is just select patch, and I'm just going to put a blurred cover in this particular one right in front of it. Right. If I create the output again, what's actually happening is that this image here will be newer than the output tiles that I've already created, because I've updated this image. So therefore the update, this is now a new image and newer than the rest. So when I click the create output button, you'll notice that it's only remapped that one. I know it was quick because Pano2VR is quick, but you saw briefly there it remapped that one image. And as it remapped it, if we look at the I can't show you actually. Let's give it just a silhouette, a simplex skin, so I can get to it. Here we go. So where's the skin? There it is. So that was that one. You'll see that we've got the patch there, but we only remapped the image because it was the input image was newer than the output. Okay, so this actually a long way round, I must admit, but it takes us back to the question of if they're on separate drives. If they're on separate network drives, this can interfere with the timestamping, and we can get into a situation where someone will say, every time I click the create output button, Pano2VR recreates or remaps all the images, but I haven't changed anything. This is probably due to the I don't know, the remote server's time clock is different to that of the system that you've got Pano2VR on. It's seeing a time difference in the images, and it thinks, oh, those images are older than my input images, I have to remap them, and that's what happens. I've seen this happen a few times. In fact, I've just dealt with a guy on the forum today that's got exactly that problem. Every time he clicks a button, it remaps the image where it shouldn't. But this is how it works. So if you're going to put your outputs and other folders in different locations, generally speaking, if they're connected, if they're local to the computer, so you've just got extra drives on your PC and things like that, it shouldn't really matter. It's only when you start going network drives, I would say, well, one, you're dealing with a speed issue because Pano2VR has to fetch and create files very, very quickly, and your network just may not be up to it. And the other thing is, if you've got a timestamp difference, you could force Pano2VR in slowing down by having to remap everything all the time. So just be wary of where these external drives are. Okay.
And I think it's also another, just to remind everybody that to kind of keep everything in that output folder. You can rename the output folder here in Pano2VR, but it's best to keep everything within that output folder.
Absolutely.
Not spread it out all over the place. There's always questions about someone putting the index HTML file somewhere and it's not working because all the connections are kind of lost. So yeah, but for all of the input stuff and the media assets and all that kind of stuff, Pano2VR consolidates everything, puts it all in the output folder, makes it all nice and neat for you. And that's great for messy people like me. My projects are spread out all over my computer. I'm really unorganized, and but on the output side, it's nice and neat. So I think that's one important thing to do, is to keep everything in that output folder.
Okay, something that's probably not actually, we get these questions that are not relevant to the webinar. Well, here's something I'm showing that's not really relevant to the webinar, but that's also with Pano2VR. We've always added an HTML5 output, or we've added a transformation output, but you can actually add multiple HTML5 outputs. As an example, this one I could say, right, let's output this. I can edit this and call this simplex. All right, and now that will create a folder called simplex, and I can add another HTML5 output, and I could give this a different skin. I don't know, let's call it cardboard. All right, and I could call this edit cardboard. Actually, I won't. I'll just do that. And basically, when you click the cog, you're actually creating the output of the visible output. You would then select the next one and click the cog. Or if you hover over the cog, it will say if you Command Option G, or if you if you Alt click the cog, basically it will create one output, and then it will automatically go to the next output and create that. So that's that one done, and it's now creating the next one as well. So you can actually have multiple outputs of the same input images, but you might have different skins. So you might have a skin for one person and a skin for another person, or you might make a cardboard version, or you might make this version, or whatever, and you can create all the different outputs from your same set of input images, and then just automate that as well. Just click go, bang, done. Okay. Sorry for digressing there, but I thought, that was worth showing.
No, I think so. I think some people get something out of that. These are like those little things that you don't realize you can do. Like it's not really clear that you can right click on the output folder name and change the folder name
Yep.
and remake it. Like when I'm working on a project, I edit my output folders to version 1, version 2, version 800, and just keep outputting them. That's how I do. And that's how things get messy, but at least everything is contained in that little output folder. So Thomas Paler wants to kind of go back and talk about tiled TIFFs. He says, sorry, back to tiled TIFFs.
That's all right.
Is the result a single file or a folder of files?
It's a single file. In fact, I will show you under the synagogue. Right, that's the original TIFF, and that's the tiled TIFF version. That's it. In fact, he says, what's a good one to show? If I go back to the Gigapixel tour, right? These were the original PSD because I questioned this with Thomas. I was like, what? If we look at this, this was the PSB, not PSD, PSB, because these are huge files. So PSB was the file type necessary to make this. That's 24.89 gigabits or gigabytes. But as we converted this to a TIFF, even though it's a tiled TIFF, that same image comes in at 9.45 gig. Now, that looks really good, but I was talking to Thomas, and Thomas was, like the compression in, Photoshop's PSB, PSD isn't that good. So, as soon as you start to use an industry standard like Big TIFF, which is what this is, so it's a tiled stroke pyramid TIFF, Big TIFF, all the same thing. When it's an industry standard, you get better compression. So you can see that here instantly. So I've got the same image, same resolution, but it loads quicker and it does all that, and it's so much more advanced. But if you've got a standard TIFF and convert it to a pyramid TIFF, then expect to see some increase in file size because you're adding to that the multi-resolution levels. But in answer to the question, there is the original file. That is the big TIFF or the pyramid TIFF or tiled TIFF version of that same image. It is just a TIFF file. It looks like a TIFF file. That's it. It's just a TIFF.
And something that Thomas pointed out, this is a great way to think of a tiled TIFF. So he says, it's a single file, and the tiles are internally within the TIFF file. So you can think of it like separate pages in a single PDF or a fax TIFF. Well, yeah, with multiple pages. So if you think of it like a PDF, if a PDF is a single file, you open it up and there's a ton of different pages in there. And same thing with a tiled TIFF. It's just one file. And,
that's actually quite a good explanation.
I know.
Well done, Thomas.
I thought the same thing. I was like, that's a great way to explain that. So yeah, okay. Okay, it looks like we got another question from Laurent. Laurent is asking, for a virtual tour, is the best workflow to create multiple outputs?
I don't get that question. Sorry.
I think the question is, or how I'm assuming this, Laurent, is if, let's say you have a tour of floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, do you output floor 1, floor 2, floor 3 in different folders, like output folders?
No. I only do that input folders going in so I can get the tags to work with them within Pano2VR. But once you've actually built your tour and you output it to the one output folder. But as long as you don't change the input images anymore, then the next time you create it, boom, it's done. It's instant. Pano2VR won't remap them. But no, the input is only in folders, not the output. The output is in its only the output is in its own output folder, but one of.
Right. Like when you output it, all the images, all of your tour images are in a folder called images. And
here we go.
Yeah.
that is what an output folder. So if you'd imagine that's the
Or
output folder. So we've got the folder of images. So that would be any assets in there, then any skin images or whatever. The tiles are the multi-resolution tiles of the different nodes. So you can see all the cube faces there. And yeah, you've got the HTML page, the XML file, the player, then skin JavaScript, all that sort of stuff. So, but that's that folder. So that's your output. In fact, there is an output folder. So that's what it would do as a standard. You'd just have that. And that is what you would upload. As what Karen was saying earlier, you can rename this, but as long as you don't rename or change anything inside that folder, if you upload that to your server and then and navigate to the HTML page within this, it will open. So yeah.
So we have another question. Thomas, you're full of questions today. Let's see. We've got is there a mechanism to share the output tiles folder with different HTML5 outputs? Especially on a large project, it takes a lot of disk space and time to create the different outputs.
I did this. Actually, I did this in the forum last night. I saw you didn't ask this in the forum last night by chance, did you? Because I answered this. Yeah, basically.
He says no.
Right. Okay. Basically, where I just showed the. Let's go back to this. What I did was I had some nodes. We did that. We dragged them in, and what you can do is, if I had an HTML5, sorry, I'm gonna edit that and call that output. I know we've already got one. It's going to tell me, it's going to complain and say yes, but I know I've got one, and I'm going to add another one. All right, so these would be your different outputs from the same images, which is what the question is. But what we want to do is each output have its just share those same images, right? So again, I'm going to edit this, so we're all going to build everything in the same output folder. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to go to the first output, we're going to go to the advanced, and what I would change here is I would again right button click and edit. So Pano_1, I would do that. I would do skin. I can go in there _1. And I can go into the HTML output. So you've got the index. I can right button click and edit that and call that, where is it? _1. And that's that. I would do exactly the same for the second output, but this time round, I would call that _2. All right. So _2. And let me just do this because it's actually quite good, because you'll see what the output looks like then. _2, and then
in the image folder.
Yeah, hang on, edit. Did I need to? No, I didn't need to do the image folder, because as long as because they'll all share the same image folder, so each output will dump the own images in there. So no, that's 2, wasn't it? Not 1. Sorry. Right, so that's 2. That's 2. That's 2. If I'm going to bin the output folder, so that's going to completely clear it. I'm going to option click, create the output, save, replace. So we're now building a new output. Right, okay. Thomas has actually made a good point of that, to be honest. Right, okay. I didn't rename the images folder either. If you look here, we've got the, I can't find it, image folder, images. Right, I didn't rename that because in the products I was in the projects I was using, I had 2 completely different skins. But Thomas is saying actually rename this as well to _1 and _2, because it's quite possible that you might have the same file names for 2 different skins, so it could collide. But basically, if we have a look at the output folder now, and you'll see this, here it is. So what we've actually got is one set of tiles, but I've got now 2 HTML outputs. So I've got 2 different outputs. and I've so I could, I mean, I didn't have a skin here, but I could have these two outputs can have two different starting positions. They can have because you can do that in the skin. You can say on, you know, config loaded, start looking at this way or whatever. You can have two different completely skins. So I'm using the one set of tiles for two independent outputs. All right, but as I say, the thing I didn't do, which I didn't really think about, to be fair, was the images. But yeah, you would do that. So you'd edit that, set that _2 as well. So that would be the images folder. But yeah, so basically that's, I think that answers that question. So with the one set of images, you can have multiple outputs. As long as you put them all into the same output folder, then they will share the same tiles. I do believe at one point I was playing around with file names, and I did actually get a situation where I got separate output folders all sharing the same tiles. I can't remember how I did that, but the simplest way is just to do this. Just rename the output folders for each of your HTML5 outputs to output. Why not? Because, you know, you're using the same images. Anyway, I have got Thomas writing on the teletype. So let's just see what words of wisdom he's going to give me. You can change the title path. Yeah, okay. So you can change the tile path. Right, okay, the pattern. Yes, indeed. So you can, under here, change it here. So it's the pattern. Right, so this is the path. So it's going to the tiles folder, blah, blah, blah. So you could actually, I think this is what I did actually. So yeah, I did something like // a folder name / and then it put the tiles in a different folder. But as long as you do replicate this, so you could literally just select all and copy that and then paste that in all of your outputs, so you could then have different outputs. I think that will work. So yeah, you can mess around with the file paths and do what, but you know, but as Thomas has just put there, this is dangerous. So, you know, play with your own sort of, you know, at your own risk, as they say. But yeah, you can do lots of different things. But that's the thing with Pano2VR, though. You know, you can experiment, you can, you know, and play to your heart's content. So, okay, I think I've exhausted. I've looked through all my notes. I don't think there's anything else I really need to cover to do with large projects. We've talked about getting large amounts of panoramas into Pano2VR, how to convert them into Tiled TIFFs so you don't take up any cache space. If you don't want to use Tiled TIFFs, you can use the settings to unload images as soon as you fill your, you know, the memory hint of Pano2VR, where you would then start to use your cache. You can set it so Pano2VR starts to unload the images that you're not working with. And as Thomas actually reminded me before the webinar, we actually track the images, so it's the last image you looked at. So if we had these to unload, I looked at that image, then that image, then that image. If I was to look at this one and I've run out of memory, it would unload the very first image we looked at, because on the understanding that you might want to go back to this one to add a hotspot. So again, there's a lot of cleverness, there's a lot of thought behind this, all working in the background. So yeah, as I say, I've gone through my notes. I can't see anything else I want to talk about or need to cover. So I'm pretty much done, really. Over to you, Karen, one more time. Do we have any more questions before we completely wrap this up?
Yeah, we have a few more to go. So Mark was asking if this has nothing to do with this webinar right now, but maybe future ones. Can we have, or is there already? And the answer is no, Mark, there is not. Can we have a webinar on all the options or the settings within the HTML5 output? There seems to be a lot of parameters that would affect sizes and quality of the project. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. And I would say, why not?
I would say if you don't know it, don't touch it, and you won't break it.
Yeah, those are actually really good words. That's one thing. You know, Pano2VR is set to output things at its most at the optimal already.
Apart from the interpolation filter, but
yeah, but that is a subjective.
It is very subjective. It is very subjective, and it's because I do a lot of theta work. So yeah,
right. You know, it's subjective, and I mean, so can the settings here be also subjective, but for the most part, if you just don't touch anything here, besides maybe changing file names just to, get the images and the files and the tiles and everything else where you want them to be, everything else works or is optimized.
It is. Yep. Absolutely.
So, and if you don't like those optimization settings, then you can always go back and change them. And one of the easiest ones to change, for instance, is going back from a single resolution to a multi-resolution, but that also has consequences. But maybe this is something that we can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
You've got
know,
single res, blah blah blah, all of this auto
yeah,
and
this is all set for optimal. It's, it's optimized already. But of course, you can go in there and change things. But yeah.
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. Um, oh, my brain's gone blank now. I've done, my brain stopped working.
That's okay. Well, I can help you out there. We're almost done. So let's see. Thomas is saying thank you. I think he was replying back to the other his earlier questions
Right.
and yeah.
Don't forget about timings of webinars and if we need anything, I'll leave that to you to ask if you want, Karen. But yeah,
To time that
as
we're
in
changing the timing of
yeah. So
webinars.
I think because we've exhausted quite a lot of the
Right.
oh yeah, over to you. You obviously know the same
Yeah,
wavelength as me now, so go on, over to you.
I think so. Yeah, I think you know more about this, but but we're gonna, ever since March, we've been having a
Excuse me.
weekly webinar without, we've had a few breaks in between, but we think we've almost covered almost everything about Pano2VR, and so now we're gonna step back a little bit and have a webinar every 2 weeks, or as you would say, Martin, every fortnight
That's it. Or
or every other
bi-weekly
week or however so bi-weekly, whatever you want to
or
say. So we'll have
fortnight.
2 webinars a month instead of 4, and with that we'd now really like to hear from you, to let us know what it is that, what are we missing, what do you want to learn more about, and yeah, let us know. Like, we deal with this with Pano2VR every day, so maybe there's something we've missed in how you use Pano2VR. And hey, oh, Henry, hi. Saying, where can you find recorded copies of earlier webinars? Um, there, let's
I'll
see.
show you. Right, okay. So you go to
And
the website, documentation, webinars,
webinars,
and they're all there. And there's
they're all
lots of them.
there.
Look,
Yeah.
since March, blooming heck.
That, they're also on our YouTube channel, and these will take you to
Yeah,
the YouTube channel, so you can always find them there. Yeah.
that's
So they're
immense.
all there for you.
Look how many we've done now. We only
I
started
don't
this
know.
in March, didn't we?
Yeah, we started in March, I think, or I don't know.
Yeah, hang on, just
Time
go.
kind of, this year's time doesn't really
That's the
fit.
first one. There we go, the 20th of March.
Yeah.
That's the first
So,
one we did.
right.
Blooming heck, look at that
Um,
lot. Oh, so there you go. Oh, look, should I register for this one? What do you reckon?
I think you should. I think that's a good idea.
I I feel I've missed something.
Yeah.
All good. But
So
yeah.
there's just one more question that I just want to say to Anonymous. Sorry, it doesn't say your name. It says it Anonymous. So, how can a large company with a lot of agents use Pano2VR? Would I have to code this out for them, or is there something more plug and play? I think for now, since this moves on beyond our topic, write us an email at support@gggnome.com, and you'll reach us and we'll answer your question there, and we can help you out with that.
And I think because to actually be fair, I didn't really understand that. So try and make that a bit clearer, the question as well, to help us try and work that out. Sorry.
Yeah. hmm Yeah.
Okay.
More specific, and so let's see. I think that's it. Yeah. So thanks a lot, everyone. You know where to find us. You can. Martin is everywhere on Facebook user group, Pano2VR user group, on the forum. I'm there too, but mostly Martin. And email at support at gggnome.com. You can reach us there, and yeah. And also, if Now is probably a good time to sign up for the mailing list to get notified when we add a new webinar. You can also do that on our website, throw in your email, and every time we update the site, you'll get an email alerting you of the new webinar, and you can sign up. So
awesome. Right. So don't forget, any suggestions for webinars, as Karen was saying earlier, either post them in, the forum, Facebook, or send them in by the support email, gnome.com, as Karen puts it out, or GGNOME. But yeah. So yeah, we can work on that. But anyway, I'm done. My throat's done. I need a drink.
Yeah, that was a long one. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah,
a lot
absolutely.
of you left, but for you who all stayed with us, thanks for doing that. And I'm going to say bye. Have a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are.
Absolutely. And once again, thank you all for attending. It's nice to see everybody's interested in the software, and putting these on is worthwhile. So once again, thank you for coming. And from me, I'm going to say goodbye until the next webinar. And I think what we'll do is we'll post what it will be when we know what it will be. So, so goodbye from me.
Bye.